Welcome to the 12th edition of Guitar Night Live, everybody. I'm Daniel Jacobson at the Ultimate School of Music in Dublin, Ireland, and my guest tonight is a Swedish technical death metal guitar player who I've been admiring his playing for quite a number of years now, and lucky to study with him a couple of times. He taught me a lot, so really pleased that he's here with us tonight. It's going to be really interesting. His name is Gottfrid Norberg Waxin. Welcome, Gottfrid.
Hello, and thank you for the very warm welcome.
You're very welcome. So, Gottfrid, just wanted to start off by asking you about how it's been in Sweden the last few months. We've been seeing on the news, it's like Sweden's taking this totally different approach to the coronavirus than every other country, and it's quite interesting. How's it been going from your point of view?
Obviously, every other country in the world is wrong. but seriously, I have no idea what's going on. It's sort of weird to be going on. It's almost keep doing things the way that we've always been doing, almost to some extent. I mean, we limit the amount of people that can be in the same space, but there's no police enforcing it. So I mean, and it's sort of weird to hear friends I have in America, for example, you can't even go out, or you can only go out and buy groceries. That's feels very foreign to me. I'm not sure what to make of the situation. I just hope that people stay safe. That's my opinion, I guess.
Sure. And where you are you in Sundsvall now?
That's correct, yeah.
And have there been many cases there in that particular area?
Oh, well, yes, there have been quite a number of cases. I don't know the exact number, but my fiance's mother, so my stepmother, I suppose, she got hit with corona.
Right.
But she's recovered fully. But it's a scary thing, and it hits close to home. And both of my parents are way up there in the risk group.
Yeah.
So staying safe.
So did they stay in most of the time?
My parents?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's they're both retired, so they stay keep to themselves mostly, and they're doing just fine. So that's feels comforting.
Good, glad to hear that. And what about yourself? Did you stay in more than usual during the period, the last few months, or was it quite normal for you?
So, rephrasing the question, was I responsible during this time? I worked a lot. Let's just put it that way. Try to keep away from people as much as possible.
Yeah.
But it's a tough situation, just there's the economy side to it as well. I guess I'm not on either of the extreme. I'm not trying to make it political here, but just taking the health and the financial aspect into account. So
sure. It's interesting. It's here in Ireland, it's been crazy. Been 3 months, nearly everybody was staying in. There was this serious big lockdown, but the things that come along with that, unexpected benefits, people played more guitar, they had more time. These things happen. So nearly most people I know have at least some positive aspects came from it. It's really strange thing, but it's good as we're opening up again.
Yeah, it's good. You could tell your students now you had no choice.
So take me back to when you started playing. I know your first instrument was bass. So what age were you when you started playing bass?
I believe I was around 6 years old, so very early. To start things off, me starting playing bass was pretty much an accident. I was under the assumption that, I was so young. And there's this, so we have this government-run music school here in Sweden, where I live, and in other cities around Sweden as well. And when I was in school, that music school came to visit, the school where I was taught Swedish and, math and basic stuff. So they came with like a pamphlet, and the pamphlet was, I didn't read. I was 6 years old. I could read, probably not very well. I looked at the pictures, and I saw a guitar, but that's like acoustic guitar. Like that's not what I want. So, and I saw some electric thing. I was like, oh, that's electric guitar, but that was bass. That was electric bass. So I started playing, we bought a bass. My parents bought a bass, and I was disappointed because it was not a guitar. But, might as well try it out. I had a lot of fun, and I definitely do not regret at all learning to play the bass. So I played the bass since I was 6 years old, and all the way up until around 20 years old. So there was a time where guitar and bass overlapped. Yeah. And eventually I came to the conclusion that, all right, guitar has to be the primary, and the bass, I'll put that aside. But so that was a very cool experience throughout the music school. I got an opportunity to play in various, kids orchestras and whatnot. And eventually I joined a jazz band called Flora Big Band.
Yeah.
And it was obviously by the name you could hear it. So it was a big band setting, saxophone, trombone, and stuff like that. And
remember how many people were in that band?
Sorry, what?
Do you remember how many people were in it? Was it like really big?
It was not 200, but it was around. I think it was like 12 to 15 people. It was different from year to year because maybe new members joined in, and all members, eventually quit. Because
you guys like play in competitions, or like do you go around to different schools or things like that?
We did play at different schools. We played on many different occasions. I have one great story about this.
Oh, go ahead.
Actually, that's another orchestra, but I'll get to that too. But we did play in many different schools and some contests. And for the jazz guys out there, what kind of jazz were we playing? Well, we played Night Train, we played Night in Tunisia, probably some other song with the name Night in it, also stuff as well. So that was a very cool experience. I was actually not a huge jazz fan, but I just enjoyed the companionship and playing with other people. I remember many times going from the rehearsal place feeling like, yes, that was the highlight of the week.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think I have a lot to thank for that period in my life when it comes to guitar today.
That's funny. I have a very similar memory of being a teenager and I used to go to a Wednesday night jazz improvisation class. It was like 2 hours long, and we'd play tunes just like that, except it was a very small group. It was only 3 or 4 people at a time, but we'd have a teacher who was good, and playing with them, I used to have the same thing walking out. I'd just be like kind of on a high after. It was just so much fun. But I actually was into jazz as well. So it was doubly good for me. But at that time, were you into metal yet? What age did you get into metal?
I think from the really early age, like 6 years old, I cannot even remember. I just enjoyed playing. But as I got older, I remember hearing Bon Jovi, the album Keep the Faith, for those people who like old Bon Jovi, like the rock, classic rock songs.
Hello. Hi, Nadia.
Huge impact. Oh, you like that? Like Bon Jovi?
Nadia does. I'm saying hi to Nadia.
Okay. Well,
And
I
like,
like Bon Jovi
and
anyway.
Lisa, yeah, I mean, like, I was never actually into them, but I like their music. We're a few classes learning Living on a Prayer now. It's actually great fun. Love the song.
Yeah, so anyway, moving on, Guns N' Roses, believe it or not, it was like
Oh,
when I
yeah.
started touching the guitar, and I'm like, Slash is the best guy ever. Like, no offense to him, but I moved on
Yeah.
and moved on to other things. I certainly liked a lot of broad taste for metal in particular. Everything from I guess the classic thing you start getting into was like Twisted Sister and Europe, and then I could name like any metal band. I listened to them all pretty much.
Yeah.
And I think that this is a nice segue into like how I started developing my musical tastes a little bit more, because as I was in this music school, I got an opportunity to play. It was like I wouldn't say a one-time thing. Oh, it kind of was a one-time thing. I was in a percussion orchestra. I didn't play percussion, but I played bass at the time. And this was like the coolest thing ever, because they decided to make the percussion orchestra play a medley of Meshuggah songs. So there was this entire percussion orchestra and bass, and we had like 8 guitars or something. It's ridiculous. If you search like Meshuggah medley up on YouTube, there's an old video with me like in a suit in like a big concert hall, 500 people on that concert. Really cool. One of my best memories, actually, musical memories ever.
When that happened, before you tell the rest of the story, had you heard of Meshuggah? Had you been like, was that like, yes, Meshuggah, or was that it was new to you?
I had no idea what Meshuggah was, and I heard the name and I almost laughed. This sounds ridiculous. I mean, what even is this music? And then I heard the songs that we were playing, and I was like, I've never heard anything like this before.
And for people who are listening and they never heard of Meshuggah, like, how do you describe what are Meshuggah? What music is it?
The apex of organized chaos in music. But it's like saying that it's poor choice of words, because I know some people are like, oh, I'm not gonna visit that then. but if you like metal and you have never heard of Meshuggah, you have to check them out.
Yeah.
Period.
Are Meshuggah, like, what kind of metal? I know they're like quite different from most other metal bands, and you know they're rhythmically, they play the most insanely difficult and complex music so tightly. Their musicianship is as high as anyone in the world. It's like they're respected by every jazz musician, every contemporary classical composer. They've just like smashed through this level that's unbelievable. But like, are they associated with a form of metal, or what are they? Are they like math metal or death metal? Do you know what to call them? No.
People just by jargon call them math metal.
Right.
But there's like, if you purposely look out, search for math metal on the web, you're gonna get just intricate weird stuff.
Yeah.
But Meshuggah is like intricate, weird, but absolutely satisfying stuff. I mean, people, I've had a lot of students that are, you know, let's put it like this, like not expert musicians, and even people that don't play music at all, but just like tons of energy in the music.
Yeah.
And they love Meshuggah. And if you love super intense music, metal music, I mean, that's about as intense as it gets. It's very, very, one of my all-time favorite bands.
Check them out, everybody. So go on back to the story. You're playing in the percussion orchestra. You're playing Meshuggah tunes.
Yes, so we had this one gig, and there was the concert hall that I mentioned, and there was this other gig. So in wintertime in Sweden, not warm, pretty cold. so and we were playing outside, like in the town square or town hall. So we were playing outside, like 30 minus Celsius degrees, like ridiculous. I had like these gloves on and such. Apparently, I managed to play anyway. And there was like this celebration is not the right word, but there was a gathering of sorts. I can't remember exactly in detail. However, there were snowmobiles there in the town square, and there was like ridiculous snow big jumps. And as we were playing this really intense Meshuggah orchestra medley thing, they were doing backflips with snowmobiles in the town square. It sounds like totally made up, but I assure you it's the truth. It's so amazing.
Sounds magical.
Yeah.
Love to see.
Very cool.
So when you started playing guitar then, what age were you when you started guitar?
So I got my first guitar when I was 16, just about to turn 17. Visited my sister in America. She lived there for a period of time.
Yeah.
And when I was there, I bought a guitar. And I started playing, not super seriously, but let's put it like this. I played a lot, but I didn't practice. I tried to play songs, metal songs that I liked, and I tried to get as good as I could, just learning songs.
Yeah.
Not deliberately practicing different stuff.
Sure. And like technically, is like your left hand must have been kind of used to some stuff from the bass, but then your right hand, did you start using a pick straight away on guitar?
Yeah, I started using a pick right away on the guitar. That came very natural. I can't explain it, but that came very natural, actually.
Interesting.
Interesting indeed. I can't remember like having to adjust very much. It's very similar to bass in a way.
Yeah.
So regulating the tension and the distance between the frets and whatnot, and there's more strings. That thing too. It was not a huge deal, but there was some adjusting. Yeah.
Was your first guitar 6 strings?
Yes, it was. It's a 6-string Schecter Classic. So it's a little bit more on the expensive side as for starter guitar, I guess you would say. But I was very, how should I put it, determined that guitar that's what I wanted since I was like 6 years old, right? So I had this built up desire to, now time for guitar.
And do you remember the early period of your guitar playing? What kind of things you played? Can you remember anything that you used to play back then, riffs or anything like that?
Stuff like that.
Same. We all play it first.
Well, there's probably some other stuff. There was a band, Nirvana. Yeah. That was like the grunge band. Yeah, I played some of that stuff too. But yeah, it was like common, what do you call it? Like common metal songs that people learn. Like Iron Maiden stuff. Pretty much.
Did you start soloing as well, or was that a little bit later on?
Oh yeah. Actually, I started like soloing a little bit when I was playing bass, even.
Cool.
And that's actually a good thing to mention, because there was a period when I was playing bass it might sound like right out of the blue, but there was actually a period before I joined that jazz band where I was considering, laying off bass completely, because I felt like I stagnated and it wasn't as fun as it was in the beginning. And I had another big passion at the time, which was martial arts, and that took a lot of time. And I was simply not playing bass as much. But as I joined the jazz band, there's a whole different thing than playing in like this kiddies orchestra. That was like that was super boring at the time when I started playing with the jazz band, because there was so much stuff. And like I remember the teacher at one point like, oh, so if you have these notes in the scale and you have a bass solo, I'm like, that's okay. And I tried it out and I was like, that was like one of the biggest yes moments I had after like a band practice. And I think that was sort of like the catalyst to start playing guitar. So fast forward, I was playing the guitar, and this whole improvising thing, I had no idea what I was doing. I just played by ear, and it just so happened that I just played basically on one string to anything that I heard, like commercials on the TV. And then I was like, no, that's not right. And then I like reinvented like intervals, so to speak, not reinvented, but I found them out on my own.
Right.
That's pretty much how I started playing something, just by ear.
That's great. That's a really good way to do it, I think. Your ear obviously had like a lot of training from playing the bass from 6, and the whole time you're playing and your ear was developing, so then you had a good ear.
Absolutely.
And then, so what age were you when you joined Deathbreed? That later?
Deathbreed. That was a while after. I believe I was so the Deathbreed band. That's guys that I've been friends with, shortly before joining the band. So we were actually friends before, or at least acquaintances. And so they were doing a local gig, and if I remember correctly, it was the singer. No, it was the guitarist at the time, which later started singing in the band. So it was the guitarist at the time. He was going away for a wedding or something at the time they were having the gig, and he was very laid back. Gottfrid, you want to come play? Sure. And we played, and we clicked very well. Yeah. And it just so happened that eventually the singer that they had at the time, he left, and the guitarist that I was standing in for was an absolutely apocalyptic, growler, of like a super thin and Christian guy, and he had this roar of a lion. And he naturally took over the vocals, and I got to play guitar there. And that was I had like a couple bands before that, but not even closest to the same level of seriousness as Deathbreed. Yeah. And eventually after that, pretty quickly after that, actually, we went away on a tour throughout Europe with a band called Diabolical, and one of my all-time favorite bands, Surreption, which just so happened to be a band from my city as well. So it's an excellent opportunity for me to, go on tour and then be on the same tour bus as Surreption, and like being the tail of those guys, like the guitarist in that band, like constantly nagging him, like, oh, so how do you play this? And can you explain this? And so,
So how did he respond? Did he give you a lot of good information? Did he teach you? Was he a good mentor?
It ended up being mostly, hanging out, and he just a big role model for me. And for me, it was just a super special time to not only be on tour, but he was there as well, and I get to spend time with him and, just talk with him. And I think everybody could definitely relate and appreciate that if you have like, oh, your hero or whatever, and you get to sit beside him and talk with him, ask questions, and just hang out.
Yeah.
That was such nice, many nice memories from that tour.
And with those guys in those bands, would they have been like big practicers? The music would have been difficult music to play, would it?
Are we talking Surreption here?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's so. Apart from Meshuggah, if you like even more intense stuff, you go to Surreption. Okay, so that would give you an idea of like the. But it's not the same ballpark. So Meshuggah is like one style, and Surreption is like that. Calm intensity. It's very surgical and very very special band. It's difficult to put in words because there's a lot of technical death metal bands that are like just like there's one gear and it's brutal all the time. But it's not like, it's difficult to put in layman's terms, but like brutality, sheer brutality. It's just very surgical.
And like, how do you explain what exactly is technical death metal? What makes that genre?
Well, it's technical, meaning it's typically very technically demanding, and it's not like these. How should I put it? It's not like this traditional. We're so far from like those typical old school metal kind of bands. It's much more intricate. If I play a short like Death Breed riff. I messed up tons there, but I haven't played it in like a year. Anyway, it's very intricate, and so Death Breed there was a Death Breed riff more brutal than Surreption is like more technical. But it's very difficult to point at words. Just look up Surreption. Very cool.
Okay, yeah. And is there a lot of odd time signatures and a lot of changing time signatures? Is that a common feature?
It certainly can be. If you picked up on the riff that I just played, it's a bit of an odd time signature, but it doesn't necessarily have to be like an odd time signature type thing. It's I guess that's a little bit of an invention on my own, not invention, but it just so happened to be I'm a huge Meshuggah fan. I like technical death metal. Meshuggah is very rhythmical in nature, and if you put the two together, you might have something like that. It's like a riff that is a little bit odd, odd meter. And I have other very short example. It's like 7/16 riff that I made. Like this is not Death Breed, it's like my own solo stuff.
Okay.
But I find it to be like, it's very intellectually stimulating, if I can be pretentious about it. It's just I like it when it's a little bit unpredictable instead of like this total. And I mean, 7/16 is have a right to be respected too. It's also a time signature, and it has this certain effect. So I think odd time signature is something that I think everyone should explore because there's so much hidden dynamic in just the time signatures.
That's really interesting because where I studied music, the teachers were very much of that opinion as well. And everybody who studied in the school where I studied music, after I finished school, when I did like a 4-year course in music, and we all learned, we did a lot of playing in odd time signatures until we were like really comfortable in any of them. They were like really going to very advanced levels, but in a completely different style of music. But that respect for going outside 4/4 and outside the normal rhythms it's pretty strong now in musicians here because a lot of them went through that school, so it had an effect.
It's good that you say that, so that there's a balance, like, so that people listening might not think, so they don't think that, oh, time signatures, that's technical death metal or whatever. It's not, nothing like that. It's it can be used in all kinds of music. I mean, now I have a super distorted sound. So if you have like different, just different time signatures, it will have a totally different effect if you sort of play the same riff, but in another. And even this is sort of a little bit an old time signature, like the Smoke on the Water riff. But it's 4/4 technically, but it's accented like how should I put it?
Gottfrid, your level of sound is dipping down.
Okay, can you hear me now? Okay.
It's quieter than before. Can you? Something happened. It dropped.
Is it better now?
Still quiet.
I have no idea what's going on. Hold on, just give me 1 second.
Wonder if is that just for me or? Let me ask on here.
Is it better now?
Oh yes, it is. Yeah.
All right, I think I got it. Do not automatically adjust volume. Okay.
So yeah, you were saying about Smoke on the Water. It's got the accents that are different. Is that what you mean by not quite normal 4/4?
Yeah. I mean, if you listen to the riff, it's kind of offbeat the second time, right?
That's right. Yeah.
So if you would play Smoke on the Water like totally 4/4, it would sound ridiculous. It would not have the same effect at all.
Then yeah, exactly.
It's like 7/8 the first time, right? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Yeah, right. It's like 7/8, like the first repetition or whatever.
Exactly. Yeah.
All right, I don't want to confuse the listeners by saying Smoke on the Water. It's 7/8.
No, well, you could easily play it in 7, yeah. Dun 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 dun.
Yeah, you could make it like totally butcher the riff, just make it.
Cool. Oh, this is very interesting. There's a question in from Nadia who said maybe some of us, including herself, hasn't known much Swedish melodic death metal or Swedish metal in general. Can you name 3 Swedish metal bands that you can listen to besides Surreption?
Okay, Surreption. So I'm just kidding. Surreption. Opeth is a like, but
Opeth.
It's like older Opeth.
Yeah.
Opeth. I love Opeth. The newer records are, I wouldn't say like so much like death metal. But my favorite Opeth album is probably Ghost Reveries, and that's a mix of really like super expressive, like clean sections with absolute brutality, and it's such the contrast is. I think no other band could do it as well as Opeth, ever did.
Cool.
So Opeth, we talked about Sarapshan. Meshuggah is also Swedish, obviously.
Yeah.
Another Swedish death metal band, Old in Flames. If you like that kind of stuff.
What did that one? Old.
In Flames, but also In Flames was. I'll just type it.
In Flames.
In Flames.
Okay. Yeah. Never heard. Cool. That's great. That gives us some stuff to explore. Soil work we got from Ludwig.
Oh yeah. Oh, yeah. He got my back. There it is.
Thank you, Ludwig. And so, kind of want to get into some of this type of things that you had to do technically on the guitar to be able to play this music. Like I was asking when you met the Sarapshan guys, like surely they must have their musicianship must have been extremely high, and they must have done a lot of practice, a lot of rehearsal. That music demands that really very lot of hard work and practice.
Absolutely.
So when you got into it and you wanted to achieve that yourself, what kind of things were you practicing to be able to do these, things like speed, playing so fast?
Oh, I did a lot of mistakes early on. Learned the hard way. But I worked on everything: alternate picking, sweep picking, economy picking, legato, string skipping, many different types of arpeggios. I still work on all of these stuff, expanding them, putting the concepts together, and we'll probably get to some of that. I'll try to show some of that stuff as well.
We take one of those things, sweep picking. So
sure.
Let's say, with the hindsight of having gone through everything you've gone through, what do you teach someone now who wants to play that music, technical death metal, but they're total beginner? At what stage do you take them through with sweep picking, say, just for example? What do they learn first?
Well, I would do 2-string sweeps.
Yeah.
And I would do rolling. Okay? So 2-string sweeps, it means we got 2 strings that we're sweeping, and then the rolling thing is that we have one finger, which is going to be like the index finger, the pointer finger.
Yeah.
They're Swedish, don't know the words of the fingers, but index finger. And the finger is, so there's boring, and that's when people just put your finger down and you crunch all the strings and then you play them all together, which is not what we want, because then we get the Chuck Berry sound, and that's not death metal, right? So we're not after that. So we want to roll. So as I'm doing this, if we're talk about the roll first to begin with. There's a difference between that and that, because now I'm barring, I get like the sound from both of those strings at the same time. That's not going to get the effect that we want. So we want to have the finger tilt a little bit depending on which string that we're on. Okay?
Yeah.
It's not more intricate than that. You just have to practice it, like I do.
Okay.
Okay. So
say is this it?
Yeah, let's say the 13th fret. Let's skip the 12th so we don't get accidental harmonics. So say the 13th fret. And then we just put the fingertip on the B string.
Yeah.
And then we would put the fingerprint on the E string.
Yeah.
Okay? And what the right hand would do is that we would just sweep those strings, and we would do 2 strokes on each string. So if we would start with, let's say we start on the E string, and you would do a down stroke, down towards the floor, and then an up stroke. Yeah. So to start with that, and then the same thing but in reverse on the B string. So up, down, very slowly. Exactly. And so now let's pretend we're in F minor. If you know the scales with this, perfect. If you don't know the scales, I'll give you the frets. So we're on 13. We do this for a while, and then we change. Instead of having the index finger do the 13th on the E string, we change the finger. So the index finger is still going to be responsible for the 13th fret of the B string, but now we're going to have the ring finger on the 15th fret on the E string. So, what happens here, we're no longer rolling, but we just have one finger down at any given time. So we don't keep both of the fingers and then do like that. It's, yet again, not the effect that we want. Yes. So one finger, if I exaggerate the movement, it's like that, one finger down at a time, okay? And now you alternate between that. And then you can just add more notes on the E string as far as you can, reach. But if you have 3 different notes that you can use on the E string, you could use, well, the 13th, the 15th, and the 16th. And then like do different sequences of those notes. So you could do like mix between any sequence of of the order of those notes, and just to start off slow, obviously, so you can get the separation and really hear it and also feel it in your fingers and your pick. And just make sure that you get the separation of the notes very clearly, and it's okay to spend a lot of time doing it slowly, just making sure you got the separation. In my experience, the speed has been the speed just comes as a product of patience.
Yes.
And with every now and then you try to speed things up and just see how it goes.
Very interesting stuff. Before I ask you another question, if anybody has a question for Gottfrid, you can just write it into the chat, or write it in the Q&A box. There's one of those, or put your hand up. There's a button to put your hand up, and then we'll unmute you and you can ask yourself if you want. So also, the Gottfrid's PayPal link is going into the chat box down there. So if anybody wants to send Gottfrid some money for this, please do that. The link will be there in the chat box.
Please, I need money for food.
Yes. So there's a question coming in from Pete, who's interested about, is your guitar specialist to this style of music, and what makes it different? Obviously it's a 7-string guitar. Anything else about it that is better suited towards this type of music? Or
it's very cool. I like how should I put it? I like guitars that look good, sound good, and are very easy to play. Typically, those are high-end guitars. This is a little bit more of a high-end guitar. It's an Abasi Larada 7, I think it's called. Tosin Abasi, one of the most popular contemporary modern guitarists today, has his own brand. I think it's called Abasi Concepts, and he makes these guitars. What's so special about this guitar? Just look at it. How is this not special? It's very cool. Very like, good that I have a black shirt. It's very like modern looking, like ergonomic, but modern, cool. I like it. I love the look of it. That's mainly why I bought it. But it's the guitar is very light. It's a simple guitar, just a volume knob, 5-way switch. To be honest, I only use on this guitar. I only use like the neck pickup or the bridge pickup.
Yeah.
Very cool looking headstock. It's a must if you play metal.
Yeah.
There's the fan fret thing going on. Not necessary at all. It's just it's a smaller scale. It means there's less distance between the frets than it is up here. Then it's a longer scale. And
what does that do? Longer scale.
It lends itself better to drop tuning
Right.
type of playing, which
Yeah.
I do. So I got like a standard and then a drop A.
Yeah.
So on a typical 7-string, this would be tuned to B, but this is dropped to A, which makes it so like some people probably know like what drop D tuning is. This is that, but for 7-string. You could do like drop A, so you could do cool chords just by doing this.
That is cool. That is very, very cool. Joseph Nabassi, if you haven't heard of him, look him up. That's his name. And so, back to the technique stuff. Can you demonstrate some of the sweep, some of the arpeggio things you do, like when you get to what you're working on now, more like, and
that's very flattering and frightening at the same time. So what I do now is what I'm working on now. So pardon the mistakes in advance, are very different types of arpeggios than what you typically would start with. So if I just brief rundown, like what people would start with this, they would later expand to like a 3-string thing, and then a 5-string thing, and then there's different positions of those, and I still practice those. Maybe not like up and down like this, because I can already do that, but putting that together musically with maybe another shape or another scale. But then there's also, so not to make this too theoretical, but arpeggios are chords, but you play the notes separately. Typically 3 notes in just one major or minor chord. What I try to do now is I add another note and then try to move. When I add another note, it's easier to move in many, many different ways. So let's say I got this shape here, but I move it all the way down here. Same shape, but now because I moved it, like with a scale, if you move the scale, it's a different key. So this is a different arpeggio, right? Now, if I add another note, add the 4th note, I got a different tonality there, okay? So instead of it sounds a little spacey, kind of. So, and what you could do is move this. You could follow the arpeggio. There's going to be tons and tons of different shapes. So this is what's waiting for you when you get to a little bit of higher level. It just gets worse. I'm just kidding. There's more to explore. That's the way I see it. And there's so many different ways you can move it. I can move this up on the same sets of strings. So that's quite different than just just like on the same, because typically what happens with sweep picking, once you've gone over like the initial, or how the technique works and stuff like that, it typically turns into like sort of a trick. And once you play it at the top, you end up at the bottom, and vice versa. That's typically how it's being played. But this is more like a Frank Gambale type approach. And then if you add more arpeggios, now I moved through the entire fretboard, okay? So, very cool sound, I feel like. But I'm still practicing this stuff. It's a work in progress. And there's other types of arpeggios, very stretchy arpeggios. I'm getting nervous just talking about them. But very, very cool sound, very classical sounding. Okay, so that's actually a part of an upcoming song from my solo stuff. It's going to be there in the future, and it's a lot faster. I'll try to play it sort of up to speed. Don't laugh if I mess up. Something like that. Very difficult arpeggios, but very super cool, intense. I love classical music.
Yeah.
Because, but like typically the way you move from one chord to the other, it's very smooth, and to me it's absolutely satisfying and like almost a cathartic experience to hear some classical progressions and play as arpeggios. It's right up my alley.
Sounds amazing. Really, really cool.
Thank you.
Okay, we're getting towards the end, but there's like a few more questions that we want to cover. I want to ask about tapping and how you use that, if you use that at all. And also, someone asked about warm-ups. Like, how much do you need to warm up to do this? Is it important?
To warm up, I could say briefly my opinion on warming up is like there's two purposes to this. You want to prevent injuries.
Yeah.
It's like an athlete, you want to prevent injuries, and you want to make sure that you're performing on your like maximum capacity in the moment, so to speak. So you don't want to start playing like these kinds of arpeggios, like you haven't warmed up at all, you're going to strain like your hand because the stretch. So you have to warm up. And how would I warm up? There's lots of different ways you can warm up, lots of different exercises. The most important thing, in my opinion, is that you try to use as little tension as possible for the fretting hand, which means if I generalize it as much as I can, you just press down on any note that you're pressing down on with the minimum amount of tension necessary to produce a clean note. That's all the tension you will ever need to play just one note like that.
That's a great point, actually, because that exercise is something that I do with students once every few months, and every single time people do it, they go, wow, I made way less pressure than I thought. And it makes perfect sense to remind yourself about what that optimal is every time, because you're going to forget again.
Absolutely. So that's one thing I would say about warm-ups.
Yeah.
For the picking hand, it's a different strategy because this has a different purpose.
Yeah.
So if you're trying to play fast and you're going like a windshield motion, like good luck. If you know nature sciences at all, I mean, if this is your picking motion, and you would just reduce that by half without moving the picking hand faster, in theory, how many more notes would you be able to play? Twice as many notes.
Yeah.
Okay. Now, if you could reduce that less and less and less, like you don't have to be like a freak about it, so you don't like you're always in contact with the string. That's not. But be aware of it. Okay.
Yeah.
You can always control. Or you should always be aware of it. Always control it. That should be the forefront when you're warming up. Also, when you're practicing. Okay. Practicing is kind of different. It depends what's your weaknesses right now. You need to be focused on those weaknesses if they're relevant. Okay. Anyway, so we said tapping, right?
Yes, tapping.
Tapping. Okay. Yeah, it's a lot of stuff you could do with tapping. What do I like to do with tapping? More arpeggios, believe it or not. So I like arpeggios. It's really cool. So you could play. You could play different extended arpeggios with tapping. Okay. So that thing that I just played here. That's like an A minor 7. A minor 6. A minor flat 6 arpeggio. But the name is not really important. That's a way that I use tapping a lot of the times. I string skip. That's a natural way to play arpeggios when you're adding a tap. So what you could do is make like progressions. Hold on. Oh. Hold on. And that would be like sort of a jazzy like progression, like with sevenths and whatnot.
Super cool.
Other stuff I could. This is where we get into mostly integration of techniques. If you know that the pentatonic scales, let's say you know the minor, the E minor pentatonic, the first position, and then like the second position, you could do. You could combine those with tapping. And you could also, if you're feeling really luxurious one night, you could do sliding between. So you kind of tap and then slide up, back and forth. So if I do a little slower, so fret 12, 15 and 17, I tap on the 17 and I slide back and forth with the pinky finger. And you can do that throughout the minor pentatonic. You can do arpeggios. So I played like this. It's good to know the traditional minor arpeggios, even if I bashed them before. I still use them. So, and then you tap like on the next note in the arpeggio and then slide back and forth. Something like that, okay? There's lots of different cool stuff you could do with tapping. One last thing with tapping that's like the most cool thing. If you got like, let's say like a pentatonic, and then you can tap a note. Very cool. So I tap a note that's like the octave of the scale. So you got minor pentatonic here. Use the same shape, but with tapping. Tap and bend really unexpected, like whoa, really high note.
Cool.
Not super, it might seem difficult, but it's really like not so hard. You play a note, tap, and then I bend. If there's a big distance between the hands, I bend as usual with a fretting hand.
That's very cool. I don't think I've ever heard that before. Okay, all students, just watch this video back on YouTube, transcribe all of those things. And just one last question in from Steve. He said he worked in Sundsvall a long time ago. He still has his Timrå Red Eagles hat. I don't know what the Timrå Red Eagles are. Is that a sports team?
Oh yeah, it's like a hockey team. This is embarrassing because I don't watch hockey, but at least I know the team, so that's very cool.
And yes, do you have to practice slow to play fast?
Oh yeah, that was the question I was waiting for.
Yeah.
Like, so how do you, and how would you go about practicing slow, and why would you practice slow? Because there's a lot of details that goes into. If you go back to the most fundamental example, if you practice that super fast right away, what's going to happen? Yeah, you're going to screw up like hopelessly. You need to slow things down so that you are aware of every single detail, every aspect of every detail, all the time. Okay, you're not gonna focus on. So if you're learning sweep, oh, but there's the thing here and the rolling here, and then okay, you break it up. So you focus on the rolling first, for example. Okay, and then even if there's like a mistake here, like just let that be, but play slow enough so that you could focus on one thing at a time, and then you shift your focus. Okay, what about the picking hand? And then you play very slowly. Make sure you got the good contact with the string. Okay, you do the right stroke direction. You do downstroke when you're supposed to do downstrokes, and up and vice versa. Really important. Limiting like the range of motion. Okay, so practicing slow is something that I've done a huge amount. And if you're not convinced, let me convince you. I would attribute like 80% of the speed that I have to what I've been doing 10% of the time, which sounds weird. But I've been playing very, very slowly, just 10% of my total practice time. Why not 100%? Because I'm not a machine. I get like super bored if I play super slow all the time. It's like unbearable. But the amount of progress that you make during the time when you play very, very slowly and limit that tension, make sure, optimize the tension as little, the minimum amount of pressure as possible. Like with this hand, don't go the windshield route, it's tiny motions.
Yeah.
All of these details and more, but make sure you go about it slowly.
That's a brilliant point to wrap up on. This was amazing. For people who've been watching this series of Guitar Night Lives, it's really so fascinating to see and hear the difference in approaches. It's just vast. It's not like one instrument, you know, different genres, different approaches. The guitar is such a vast instrument. It's like many, many, many instruments, really. So it's fascinating to hear and see your approach. It's brilliant. Really enjoyed it. Can you play us to the end something?
Wish me luck.
Good luck.
I'm gonna play it unaccompanied, I guess, so you didn't hear all the mistakes.
Have you got any more volume on the guitar? Yeah, that's better.
The better?
Yeah.
All right, here we go. Something like that. Next singer.
Okay.
That's the upcoming single called Plague from Within. Check it out. Follow me on Instagram, called Hexolydian on Instagram. Daniel will provide you with every information that you need. Check it out.
What's the name on Instagram?
Hexolydian.
Hexolydian, like that.
Exactly like
on
that.
Instagram. Okay.
Yes.
We've got actually one more question came in if you have time.
Sure.
From Damien, he asked, how do you hold the pick and what force and what way do you hold it?
You crunch it like a Swede. So you have to be born in Sweden, by the way. I don't know. It's not gonna work. So I got this weird triangle-like pick.
Yeah.
It's a prime tone Dunlop pick, like extra large, and I try to like. I'm holding a gun. I'm putting the finger like in the trigger area. I'm folding my finger like this. You see? Yeah. I'm not pinching my own hand, but I got a little bit of space there. I put the pick like so, and then I put the thumb on top of it. That's the gist of it, and you want to have enough of the pick sticking out so that you don't like accidentally mute the string as you're playing it. Okay, and once we're talking about the guitar pick thing, I mute with this side of the thumb. Okay, you can still hold the pick like this and mute with a palm too, if you're into that kind of thing. I mute with a palm as well when I want like palm muted sound. Okay, yeah. But that's how I hold the pick. You decide.
Steve says, best pick shape ever. Brilliant. Great answers. Really, really informative and entertaining and enjoyable. Sinead said, awesome. Maddie said, super cool. We'll leave it there. But everybody, if you're around in 2 weeks' time, we're going to have another Guitar Night Live with a bass player this time. The first time we're having a bass player on the show. It's a bass player called Tanya O'Callaghan, who's from Ireland, but moved to LA 5 years ago, and she is now playing with the likes of Tool and Kiss and bands that are really at the very high levels. She's a very successful bass player. Really looking forward to talking to her. Once again, thank you so much, Gottfrid, for coming on. It's just been brilliant. This will be on YouTube if you want to watch it back and transcribe all those things. Slow it down to 0.25 on YouTube. You can do that now. Cool.
Thank you so much for inviting me. It's been a pleasure.
You're very welcome. See you next time.